Increasing roles and responsibilities of NGOs. The Disaster Management Bureau, DMB, has been assigned the role of coordinating the activities of NGOs. The NGOs constitute a vibrant sector in Bangladesh, and have been acclaimed worldwide. NGOs and CBOs are actively involved, among others, in disaster management, microcredits, family planning, and human rights protection. As a matter of fact, the advent of NGO activities in Bangladesh owes its origin to the rehabilitation works immediately after the devastating War of Independence in 1971. Currently, about a quarter of foreign assistance to Bangladesh is channeled through the NGOs. Therefore, their contributions, particularly to the social service sector and the mobilization of the poor, are quite prominent. This has been acclaimed by the international community. NGOs like the Grameen Bank and Bangladesh Rural Advancement Committee, BRAC, have extended their development and disaster management programs at the international level as well. NGOs such as CARE Bangladesh, Oxfam Bangladesh, ActionAid, Intermediate Technology Development Group Bangladesh, Bangladesh Disaster Preparedness Center, BVPC, and Disaster Forum are particularly involved in various pre, during and post-disaster activities. Pre-disaster activities include advocacy, public education campaigns and training programs for personnel involved in disaster management from the national down to the union or local community level. NGOs also are active in emergency evacuation and in taking people to shelters. The post-disaster activities include offering new microcredits or rescheduling their loan payment programs for rehabilitation. Developments in the institutional framework, introduction to the Comprehensive Disaster Management Plan, CDMP. Besides the Cyclone Preparedness Program, CPP, and the standing orders, the government of Bangladesh adopted a corporate plan, 2005 to 2009, called Comprehensive Disaster Management, a framework for action. The US $15 million Comprehensive Disaster Management Plan, CDMP, Table 1, was funded by TFID and UNDP. It aimed to reduce the level of community vulnerability to natural and human-induced hazards and risks to manageable and humanitarian levels. This program was supposed to be implemented through a program-based approach that encompassed all aspects of risk management. The approach comprehended a transition from a single agency response and relief system to a holistic strategy involving the entire development planning process of the government. CDMP Phase 2 was launched in 2010 to institutionalize the adoption of risk reduction approaches, and to channel support through government and development partners, civil society and NGOs into a people-oriented disaster management and risk reduction partnership. The project period will be 2010 to 2014. Subprograms, outputs, target area/group and implementing agencies of CDMP. Adapted from the Corporate Plan, 2005-09, 2010-14 acknowledged the need for pre-disaster mitigation and preparedness of the people as opposed to the earlier concepts of responding after a disaster had taken place. Priority was accorded to focus on community-level preparedness, response, recovery and rehabilitation. Programs to train people living in disaster-prone areas were emphasized to improve their capability to cope with natural disasters. The corporate plan emphasized a series of broad-based strategies. First, disaster management involved the management of both risks and consequences of disasters, which included prevention, emergency response and post-disaster recovery. Second, community involvement was a major focus for preparedness programs to protect lives and properties. The involvement of local government bodies was an essential part of the strategy. Self-reliance was the key for preparedness, response and recovery. Third, non-structural mitigation measures, such as community disaster preparedness, training, advocacy and public awareness, were given a high priority. This required the integration of structural mitigation with non-structural measures. The strategic focus of the CDMP was to lay the foundation for the shift in principle from a post-disaster relief and response strategy towards a comprehensive risk minimization culture that encouraged disaster resilience initiatives. This approach was to be realized through a series of interconnected strategic directives. Raising the level of expertise of the disaster management systems. Mainstreaming disaster risk management programming. Strengthening community institutional mechanisms. Expanding preparedness programs across a broad range of hazards, and putting the response systems into operation. Based on these directives, The major subprograms of CDMP included 1. Capacity building, 2. Partnership development, 3. Community empowerment, 4. Research and information management, and 5. Response management. Under the subprogram of partnership development, the government actively sought to achieve a multi-agency approach that encompassed the institutions of the government, NGOs and private sector in a collaborative strategy for the alleviation of disaster-induced poverty. This enhanced coordination and information sharing among the various actors and thus maximized the efficacy of resource use for effective risk reduction. Under the Community Empowerment Sub-Program, the government planned to further consolidate the empowerment process by expanding the program and by realizing community capacity building through awareness and skill development and by expanding disaster management studies within the school system and staff training academies. Besides these, disaster risk reduction was incorporated as a component into the Poverty Reduction Strategy Paper, PRSB, of Bangladesh as Annex 9 of Disaster Vulnerability and Risk Management. The preparation of the PRSB, funded by the World Bank, acknowledged a holistic approach to disaster management.